That night, there was a murder in our building. 3 fingers, 3 victims. It was him. The horrifying man stood on top of one of the garages. I was sure that fate was on my side. I didn't have to reach for the stars, but life was going more or less well. By the age of 24, I had landed a pretty good job. I was a tennis instructor. I'd loved this sport since childhood, and now I could do it all the time, teaching others, and I was getting paid for it. Not everyone is lucky enough to turn their passion into their profession, so I valued that job. The pay, however, was quite modest. With that salary, I could never hope to own my own place. But in that regard too, I got lucky. My aunt, who had no close relatives besides our family, left me her apartment as an inheritance, just like that, out of the blue. Although I had my suspicions that my relatives might have asked her to do it. Her only son had become an alcoholic and died before he could inherit the apartment. Drunk, Henry had fallen off the stairs and didn't make it. He never made it to the apartment. In a drunken haze, he stumbled on the stairs and broke his neck. After that, Aunt Margaret was taken care of by my mom and grandmother. I rarely saw her myself and didn't really take part in helping, so I was surprised when I learned that the apartment had been signed over to me. I moved into that old house on Rexdale. I replaced the worn-out wallpaper and swapped the old creaky bed for a new one with an orthopedic mattress. Bit by bit, I settled in and built a modest bachelor life. As money allowed, I did some renovations and bought furniture. Then I started paying attention to the people around me, and that's when I noticed an interesting girl living in the neighboring building. She was pretty, very pretty, or maybe just exactly my type. I immediately liked her dark chestnut hair, expressive eyes, and slightly parted lips. She dressed simply, oversized t-shirts, light jeans, and white sneakers. She seemed quiet and timid, but there was a kind of warmth about her. I liked that. I instantly wanted her to notice me too. Without realizing it, I started showing off whenever she was around. Walking by with my tennis racket slung over my shoulder, putting on a serious look, running my fingers through my hair, and finally, I got the perfect chance to act like a gentleman. She was coming home carrying a big box from a pickup point, and I ran up to help her carry it. "Thanks," she said, looking me in the eyes. Now I had a reason to greet her. It seemed she was curious to get to know me too, but I didn't want to come off as pushy or scare her off. I thought it best to let things develop naturally. One day, I was coming home from work and ran into her in the yard. "Hi," I said, smiling. "Hi," she answered, then asked, "Is that a racket in your case?" Although that was obvious. "No, it's a weapon," I replied, putting on a serious face. "Actually, I'm a hired killer." "Oh, and the best way to lie is to tell the truth, right?" She smirked, her eyes sparkling, and we started laughing. That's how we started talking. Her name was Sarah. She was a year and a half younger than me and was in her final year of law school in our town. She rented an apartment and lived alone, just like I did. We had a lot of interests in common: TV series, food, and other little things. Sarah said she'd always been interested in tennis, but never had the chance to try it. After hearing that, I didn't need any more encouragement. I asked her out. She played, of course, rather poorly, constantly dropping her rackets, missing shots, and not seeing the ball well because of poor eyesight. But it was obvious she was having fun. She got frustrated afterward, yet she never stopped trying to improve her game. "If everyone had your persistence, I'd be out of a job," I teased. Quietly, I tried to encourage her. "Don't flatter me," she said, swatting the ball somewhere off to the side. I knew she was far too clumsy for tennis. I had been that way myself once, but if you practice something you love every day, you simply can't help but get better at it. After a couple of hours on the tennis court, our relationship started developing rapidly. We spent every evening together, walking, watching movies, Sarah had visited me and I had gone to her place. One day, for change, I suggested we go to the cinema. I hadn't been in a long time, but I remember enjoying it before. We met outside my building as planned. Sarah linked her arm with mine and we started walking towards the mall. Suddenly, she stopped abruptly and pulled me in a different direction, even though it wasn't the shortest route to the main street. "What's wrong?" I asked, surprised. "Nothing, just let's go this way. We're not late," Sarah replied, gripping my arm tighter. They say it's good to change familiar routes from time to time. I don't fucking know who exactly said that, but I silently agreed and followed her. But when I glanced back, I understood why she had changed direction. In the area we had just avoided stood a strange man. From a distance, his facial features seemed horrifying, grotesque. He was completely bald, his head shining like a wax figure. His eyes were enormous, bulging and round like a fly's. His mouth was so wide it looked more like an animal's jaw, as if his cheeks had been torn from ear to ear. As we walked, Sarah kept talking about random things. The weather, how she hadn't had popcorn in ages, and how she once caught a cold in a movie theater because of the air conditioning. I don't know, it seemed to me that she was trying to distract me to avoid an uncomfortable topic. But I was persistent, I asked anyway. "And who was that man standing there? Do you know him?" I asked. "Who are you talking about?" she said, looking completely puzzled. "This bitch! Can you believe that?" "We were walking and there was some guy in the road, and you pulled me in another direction," I reminded her. "Who was he?" "There was no guy there," she said, her words sounding like nonsense because I clearly remembered seeing someone. Hello, that motherfucker was ugly as fuck. "Are you kidding me? You were wearing glasses, you should have noticed that strange, creepy man," I said. "Well, there was someone bald and menacing. I got scared, didn't want trouble, so we left," Sarah replied nervously. "And who was he? Why was he so scary?" I pressed. "How should I know?" Sarah shrugged and let go of my hand. "A guy's a guy, maybe just a thug or a homeless man. Why are you so hung up on this man? Go chase him and find out yourself." Alright. Sorry, I didn't want any conflicts and didn't even understand why I got so worked up. "Friends?" I offered my pinky and smiled. I wanted to smooth over this awkward moment so the rest of the evening could go well. Sarah looked at me carefully, then smiled and linked her pinky with mine. We continued toward the mall in an awkward silence, only occasionally broken by meaningless small talk. The movie turned out to be rather boring. Even the act of going to the theater felt tedious. The colors on the screen were dull, the sound was bad, the seats uncomfortable, and someone kept coughing in the hall. I concluded that watching at home was far more comfortable, and Sarah agreed. On the way back, we talked about how streaming services would sooner or later kill the culture of watching movies collectively on the big screen. A love for cinema built a small bridge over the chasm that had briefly separated us. I even forgot about the earlier incident that evening, but her behavior made me remember. "Ethan, I have to get up early for class tomorrow, so I'm planning to go straight to sleep," Sarah said as we reached her building. "No problem," I replied, seeing her to the entrance. There was something different about her, tense and nervous, thoughtful. She didn't even kiss me, just hugged me and wished me good night. Something was troubling her. I went back to my building and saw that man again, but this time up close. He stood on the corner of our block, lit by a street lamp. My eyes didn't deceive me. He was indeed grotesque. Waxen, hairless skin, bulging eyes, and a wide, toothless mouth. I squinted, wondering if it was some terrifying mask, but it felt like it was really his face. This motherfucker is really ugly. Suddenly, he opened his mouth wider, and a thick, red liquid gushed out, as if he was vomiting blood. Streams ran down his shin, along his neck, soaking through an already dirty shirt, torn in several places. What the fuck, I said, thinking to myself. I coughed from nausea and rushed into the building to avoid seeing more of that horror. The image of him imprinted itself in my mind, and the rest of the evening I felt sick, unable to stop thinking about it. I couldn't help but tell Sarah what I'd seen. I sent her a voice message. Sarah, I just saw that strange man again. He was standing there, spitting blood. I'm serious, just be careful, okay? She listened to the message but didn't respond. Strange how calmly she took it. I had a bad feeling and it was right. That night, there was a murder in our building. I didn't see it myself, but the rumors spread instantly. Neighbors said that a man from apartment 4B had died, found with an eye punctured in a pool of blood. Apparently, he'd been struck in the face with something sharp. Someone eavesdropping on the police overheard them saying that the wound went all the way to the brain and that death was probably instantaneous. The victim's acquaintances fell under suspicion. He had been a lonely man, often inviting guests over to drink. The police assumed it was just another drunken brawl gone wrong. But I believed it wasn't that simple. The coincidence was too striking. First that terrifying man appeared, then the gruesome death of one of the neighbors. Surely it had to be connected. That evening, when Sarah and I met at my apartment, I couldn't keep silent and shared my suspicions. She listened quietly, then said, Ethan, let's not talk about this. Why, do you know something? I guessed, leaning closer to her face. I know, but we can't talk about it, she replied tensely, looking into my eyes. Tell me at least something, I asked. You're right, that man killed our neighbor, Sarah said, lowering her gaze. Or rather, he's not human. I don't know what he is. They call him Bloody Face. He kills people, but you mustn't talk about it, understand? You have to pretend he doesn't exist. And if you speak of him, there will be more victims. A tear slid down her eyelashes to her lips. Alright, calm down. I get it. I won't say anything else, nor will I ask, I promised. Muttering to myself, Bloody Face? Don't expect any good from a guy with that name, right? You know, I've only lived here a short time and don't know the local legends, I said. Sarah whipped her tears. I know how crazy this sounds, but just trust me and stay quiet. He appears once every few years. People die, then he disappears again. That's just the way it is. You have to wait it out. If you see him somewhere, don't notice him. Don't tell anyone. Alright, I nodded. I promised I wouldn't bring up the subject again, and if I ever encountered him, I wouldn't even look in his direction. I wasn't eager to uncover the truth anyway. What was happening seemed absurd, but there's a reason people believe in such things. There are countless terrifying legends, and I'm not one to test them. One warning is enough for me to stay away. After that, my relationship with Sarah became cold and superficial. She started avoiding me, and I decided to give her space rather than force myself on her. I focused on my own life, taking on extra hours at work, coaching young athletes and casual players, spending evenings alone with a movie or a book. No one spoke of the murdered neighbor anymore, as if everyone had forgotten him immediately after the funeral. But that's often the way with people who drift throughout years without purpose. A drunk lived his life, drank with someone, stumbled around somewhere, then died. They put him in a coffin. On the 9th day, they clinked their glasses and everyone went back to their routines. Not everyone even remembers his real name. To many, he would always remain Sam Cooper, apartment 4B. I hoped that the man called Bloody Face had disappeared. But one morning, stepping into the yard, I squelched my shoe into something sticky and vicious. "Damn it, I just cleaned this up," I shouted. It looked like a mix of vomit and blood. On the porch, There was already a whole batch of red slime. He had thrown up again, so he was still somewhere nearby. And what did he want here? I stepped off the porch, whipping my shoe, and headed toward the bus stop, passing by the garage cooperative. I suddenly felt a heavy gaze on me. It seemed to sink into the back of my head, forcing me to stop and look around. It was him. The horrifying man stood on top of one of the garages. His bald head gleamed like polished wax. His eyes bulged unnaturally from their sockets. His toothless mouth was stretched to the limit. Red slime dripped from his chin in a grotesque rhythm. What a terrifying creature. A shiver ran through me. You cannot notice him. He does not exist, I reminded myself and walked on, tucking my head into my shoulders and hiding my hands in my pockets, as if trying to make myself invisible. Later that same day, Sarah called me and suggested we meet. Her call was unexpected. She arrived almost as if to test me to see how firm I was in keeping my promise. "What's new with you?" she asked. "New? Nothing. Work, home. I've missed you," I said, trying to hide my unease. "And you? Same as always?" "Same as always. Maybe we could watch something tonight," suggested Sarah. I agreed without hesitation, and we spent the evening watching a comedy show where a couple of flamboyant guys answered viewers' life questions. It was supposed to be funny, and maybe it was, but I couldn't get that creature out of my head. Its image was stuck deep in my mind, looping like a broken film reel. I stared at the laptop screen, but all I could see was that disgusting, deformed face. Sarah still attracted me, but our relationship had hit a strange pause. Everything felt awkward, tense, unstable. I realized that maybe it was all because of that bizarre being, and I was just waiting for it all to end. She refused to stay the night, and without asking, I insisted on walking her home. I just needed to make sure she got there safely. "Good night," I said. Sarah gave me a quick hug and headed toward her building. I turned and walked back, glancing around nervously. Was he anywhere nearby? The streetlights glowed weakly. The yard was empty. Only someone's cat sat on a bench, staring at me intently. Good, I thought as I entered my building. I climbed the stairs to my floor. The sound of my own footsteps echoed unnaturally loud in the night's silence. It felt like someone was watching me. That unbearable sensation of an unseen gaze piercing through me, burning into the back of my skull. Fear flickered inside me, mixed with hatred. I just wanted to get to my apartment without looking up the staircase, but I couldn't help it. He was standing there. The moment I looked at him, he opened his foul, gaping mouth again, and from it poured an endless stream of scarlet slime. It splashed like a fountain, trickling down the steps and pulling at my feet. Try pretending you don't see that shit. But I managed. I crushed my fear and disgust. Unlocked my door and stepped inside. My shoes and the cuffs of my jeans were speckled with red droplets. Fucking bastard, choke on your bloody vomit, man. I said nothing to anyone, but that didn't help. That same night, someone killed my neighbor. A kind, lonely woman, plump, rosy-cheeked, always smiling. She greeted everyone who passed by and never argued with anyone. No shady guests came to her apartment, and she was never sprawled drunk by the entrance. The neighbor led a quiet, peaceful life, careful not to bother anyone. Who would want to kill her? The circumstances of her death were strange. Her apartment door was open, and she lay at the threshold with her heart pierced. It looked as though she had opened the door for someone, and they had stabbed her in the chest. A light rain fell, forming deep puddles on the worn asphalt. I pulled on a light hoodie, put up the hood, stepped outside, and stood under the canopy. The body was carried out and loaded into a car. I didn't know her name. She had asked me to hold the door a couple of times, and just last week had planted daffodils in the yard. Not because anyone asked her, but simply because she enjoyed it. I stood outside with the other neighbors, watching the car drive away. The autumn wind cut through my hoodie and chilled my legs. I had rushed out in my house shorts and slippers. People sighed and murmured among themselves. An elderly man in a checkered driver's cap mumbled, "Who could do such a thing?" "You know what kind of monster it was," I said, unable to hold back the indignation. The man looked at me in surprise. "I know? How?" "Bloody face," I muttered, my hands numbed by the cold. "Bloody what?" the man said, looking at me like I was crazy. "Who is that? From our building? Or some special circle?" I froze and went silent. The old man seemed to be really clueless. While I assumed everyone was already aware but afraid to speak, the people around looked utterly confused too. It seemed they genuinely didn't understand what had happened. None of them had seen Bloody Face. No one noticed the red slime splattered everywhere. How could that be? What if Sarah had lied to me? Thinking this over, I called her and told her about the elderly neighbor's death, asking her to explain everything. "Meet me tonight, and we'll talk, okay?" she said, then hung up. I didn't like this. Sarah had become strange, constantly avoiding me. Each day I felt my interest in her fading. I wasn't even eager to meet her anymore. But half an hour before midnight, someone knocked at my door. I looked through the peephole and, seeing that it was Sarah, opened the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice anxious. "Yeah, come in. I've actually been waiting for you all evening," I replied, stepping aside. "Sorry, I have some things to take care of," she said, loosening her coat. I didn't press for details. She behaved like a stranger. We walked into the room and she sank onto the sofa. Her eyes sparkled like stars. "So, what did you want to tell me?" I asked, feeling the chill creeping into my hand. "The truth," she replied. "I didn't want to tell you that he only appears to those he chooses. So, that includes you," I said slowly. "He will calm down after he kills 3, then disappear for a while. I tried to hide many times, but he always found me and..." "Wait, what? He chose you as one of his victims and you never said anything?" I asked nervously. "I don't know why he wants me. Probably because he just likes seeing me suffer when he kills people. It's torture, but over time, I got used to it," she said. Her voice hardened. Sarah hid her face behind her hair, bowing her head. "I'm afraid if I refuse to help, he'll kill me." "Help? What do you mean?" I asked, just as I heard footsteps in the hallway. "You didn't close the door?" "Sorry," she murmured, still sitting with her head down. Suddenly, he appeared in the doorway. His jaw hung slack. A clump of red slime splattered across his head. In his hand gleamed something sharp, not exactly a knife, more like a jagged piece of metal. Could my life end like this? The thought flashed through my mind and my heart clenched with fear. Sarah turned her pale face to me. She was no longer crying. Her gaze had become cold and empty. "Better you than me," she said indifferently. The creature stepped, not toward me, but toward her. The blade flickered in his hand, grazing her neck, then the monster quickly withdrew. Silence fell. Not understanding why this was happening, I pressed myself against the wall. Bloody Face stood at the doorway and Sarah sat on the couch, in shock, seemingly unaware of what had just occurred. Blood oozed from the wound on her neck, streaming over her skin and soaking her clothes. She touched her chest and looked at her hand, then fixed her gaze on me again, wheezing as if trying to speak. I rushed to her and pressed my hand against her. "Sarah, can you hear me? It's going to be okay. I'll fix this. Just hang on, okay?" She didn't respond. Her eyes suddenly glazed over and she collapsed to the floor. A pool of crimson spread around her head. my heart filled with a tearing pain and helplessness. I stood up, swallowing hard, and looked at the monster. He held up 3 fingers. 3 fingers, 3 victims.